The sharp, metallic clang of the containment gate echoed through the cavernous halls of the alien zoo as the last of the electromagnetic locks disengaged. Kai barely had time to react before the floor beneath him began to hum, signaling the approach of a transport pod. His heart raced, adrenaline surging through his veins as he grasped the bars of the enclosure. The corridors outside were alive with flashing lights and the distant clamor of alien voices, an alarm, unmistakably. It was now or never. "Move it, Kai," shouted Lena, her eyes darting between the control panel and the corridor. "They're onto us." Kai didn't need to be told twice. With a final, desperate glance at the approaching pod, its sleek, crystalline form gliding ominously toward them, he sprinted past Lena and into the dimly lit corridor. Behind them, the other humans housed in neighboring enclosures watched with a mix of fear and hope, their fates teetering on the edge of this audacious escape plan. The alien zoo was a sprawling, bewildering maze, each section dedicated to a different species plucked from planets across the galaxy. But this was no ordinary exhibition. Each creature was a pawn in a political game played by the galaxy's elite, a statement of power and control. For Earth, the stakes had never been higher. When the Council of Unity declared it the next galactic battleground, the planet's fate was sealed. The zoo was both a spectacle and a strategy, a way to study, manipulate, and prepare for the impending conflict. Lena's voice cut through Kai's thoughts, urgent and sharp. "Which way, Kai, left or right?" He hesitated, scanning the intersecting paths. They'd barely had time to study the schematics Lena had hacked from the security network. "Left," he decided, trusting his gut. The control room should be that way. As they sprinted through the winding corridors, the sound of pursuit grew louder. The aliens, tall and clad in bioluminescent armor, were closing in. Their guttural, clicking language echoed in the halls, demanding the humans' immediate capture. Kai and Lena were not just escaping, they were a symbol of defiance, a disruption in the carefully curated order of the zoo. They rounded a corner and skidded to a halt before a massive, sealed door. The control room, a gateway to their freedom. Lena quickly went to work, her fingers dancing over the alien keypad. "Cover me," she breathed, her concentration unwavering. Kai turned, his back to Lena, scanning the corridor for any sign of their pursuers. His heart thudded in his chest, a relentless drumbeat of fear and determination. The alien voices were closer now, accompanied by the rhythmic clatter of their approaching footsteps. "Lena, hurry," he urged, tension coiling in his muscles, ready to spring into action. The door's locking mechanism beeped, and with a hiss, it slid open. "Got it," Lena exclaimed, grabbing Kai's arm and pulling him inside. The room was a whirlwind of alien technology, screens displaying live feeds from every corner of the zoo. In the center, a console beckoned, its controls glowing with an ethereal light. "Can you shut down the security system?" Kai asked, watching as Lena immediately dove into the console's interface. "I'm on it," she replied, her voice steady despite the chaos around them. "But it'll take a minute." The aliens were at the door now, their voices rising in urgency. Kai backed away from the entrance, readying himself for the inevitable confrontation. He could feel the weight of their mission pressing down on him. This wasn't just about escape, it was about sending a message to the galaxy that humanity would not be a mere pawn. Suddenly, the console emitted a shrill alarm, and Lena let out a frustrated groan. "They've locked me out, I need more time." Time they didn't have. Kai's mind raced, searching for options. He spotted a utility panel on the wall, marked with symbols he vaguely recognized from their stolen schematics. "Cover me," he said, switching places with Lena. With a swift motion, he pried open the panel and began to reroute the power. The aliens were pounding on the door now, their efforts to breach it growing more frantic by the second. Kai's fingers worked feverishly, driven by sheer instinct. "Almost there," he muttered, feeling the system start to give. With one final adjustment, the lights flickered, and the sound of security barriers disengaging resonated throughout the zoo. "We're in," Lena shouted triumphantly, taking over the console once more. "I've disabled the locks. Let's move." They bolted from the control room, charging down the corridor as the zoo descended into chaos. Doors opened throughout the facility, creatures of all shapes and sizes emerging from their enclosures. The cacophony of liberated animals filled the air, their cries a symphony of rebellion against their captors. Kai and Lena raced toward the central atrium, where the transport pods were docked. If they could reach one, they might just have a chance at escaping the planet. But the aliens were relentless, their pursuit undeterred by the zoo's pandemonium. As they burst into the atrium, the scene that met them was both awe-inspiring and terrifying. Humans and creatures alike were converging on the transport pods, a surge of desperate, chaotic energy. Kai and Lena pushed through the throng, their eyes fixed on one pod in particular, a sleek, streamlined vessel that promised speed and agility. Lena reached the pod first, her hands flying across the controls to initiate the launch sequence. "Get in," she yelled over the din, and Kai scrambled aboard. The POD's engines roared to life, and as Kai glanced back through the viewport, he saw the aliens closing in, their weapons raised. His heart pounded in his throat. They were so close. With a lurch, the pod lifted off the ground and shot forward, soaring into the sky above. The zoo shrank beneath them, a sprawling complex of chaos and confusion. But as they ascended, a new threat revealed itself, a blockade of alien warships hovering above the atmosphere, ready to intercept any unauthorized departures. Kai's stomach dropped. "Lena, look," she cursed under her breath, her hands flying over the controls as she plotted a course through the blockade. "Hold on tight," she warned, her voice laced with determination. "We're getting out of here." The pod weaved through the blockade, evading the beams of energy that lanced toward them with uncanny precision. Kai held his breath, his eyes locked on the viewport as they dodged and darted past the enemy ships, the tension in the cabin palpable. Then, just as it seemed they might break free, a warning light blared on the console. "They're targeting us," Lena shouted, her voice tight with urgency. A missile streaked toward them, a deadly harbinger of destruction. Kai's mind raced, searching for any solution. "Can you outrun it?" "I'm trying," Lena snapped, pushing the pod to its limits. The missile closed in, a relentless force of inevitable doom. In a desperate maneuver, Lena veered sharply to the right, skimming the edge of the atmosphere. The missile sailed past them, but the reprieve was short-lived. Another warship loomed ahead, its weapons primed. Kai's heart sank. They were trapped, caught between the hammer and anvil of their enemies. But just as all seemed lost, a new presence appeared on the radar, a signal unfamiliar, yet unmistakably human. The comm crackled to life, a voice cutting through the chaos. "This is Captain Reese of the Earth Resistance Fleet. Hold your course, we're coming in hot." Hope surged within Kai, a lifeline thrown from the depths of despair. "Lena, did you hear that?" She nodded, her eyes wide with a mixture of disbelief and relief. "I heard." The alien warships shifted, their attention drawn to the new arrivals. A fleet of human ships emerged from the void, their engines blazing as they engaged the enemy. The sky lit up with the fury of battle, a testament to humanity's indomitable spirit. As the resistance fleet carved a path through the blockade, Lena seized the opportunity. "Now's our chance." The pod shot forward, slipping through the chaos as the human ships provided cover. Kai watched in awe as the tide of battle shifted, the aliens caught off guard by the ferocity of the resistance. They broke free of the blockade, the open expanse of space stretching before them. The stars beckoned, a promise of freedom and the chance to fight another day. But as they sped away from the planet, Kai knew the fight was far from over. The galaxy had chosen Earth as its battleground, and the struggle for survival had only just begun. Humanity would face insurmountable odds, but they would not do so alone. With a grim determination, he turned to Lena. "We have a lot of work to do." She nodded, her expression mirroring his resolve. "Let's get to it." As they charted a course for the resistance base, Kai allowed himself a moment of reflection. They had escaped the zoo, but in doing so, they had ignited a spark, a beacon of hope that would rally humanity to its cause. And as the stars streaked past, Kai knew one thing for certain: they would not be caged again. The air was thick with tension as the humans crouched behind a cluster of enormous, bioluminescent fungi. Their makeshift haven concealed them from the prying sensors and drones that the alien zookeepers had unleashed in response to the breakout. The fungi emitted a soft green glow, casting eerie shadows that danced across the faces of the escapees. Captain Sarah Mitchell, formerly of the Earth Coalition forces, peered through a gap in the fungal canopy. Her muscles were coiled with readiness, her eyes scanning the alien terrain for any sign of movement. She had always been a soldier first, but now, in this bizarre landscape, she was a leader, thrust into a role she had never anticipated. "What's the status on those drones, Carter?" she asked in a low voice, tinged with urgency. Beside her, Corporal James Carter was hunched over a small device scavenged from their captors. His fingers moved deftly over the alien tech. "They're still canvassing the area," he replied, his voice a gravelly whisper. "But I've managed to scramble their signals for now. We might have a few hours before they recalibrate." "Good," Sarah replied, though her mind was already racing towards their next move. "We need to figure out where we are and how to get back home. This isn't just an escape, it's a war for survival." The small band of humans had been captured months ago, plucked from Earth by a species known as the Credorians, who were infamous for their intergalactic zoos. The Credorians saw themselves as connoisseurs of biodiversity, collectors of lifeforms from across the cosmos. Earth's inhabitants were their latest acquisition, displayed as curiosities in habitats designed to mimic their home environments. Sarah had been among the first to orchestrate the breakout, a daring escape that had seen them breach the enclosure walls and evade capture, at least temporarily. Now, they were fugitives on a world teeming with alien life, each step fraught with peril. As she glanced around at her fellow escapees, Sarah saw the hope and fear etched into their faces. There was Dr. Elise Park, a biologist whose knowledge had been invaluable in navigating this strange ecosystem. Next to her was Marcus Tenner, a mechanic and engineer whose ingenuity had already saved them more than once. Then there were the twins, Mia and Liam Chen, teenagers with a knack for causing trouble, whose fearlessness had sparked more than a few debates about their safety. "We can't keep running blind," Sarah said, addressing the group. "We need to find the control center for this zoo. If we can shut it down or at least gain access to their communication systems, we might stand a chance of contacting Earth." Dr. Park nodded, adjusting her glasses. "The Credorians are advanced, technologically speaking. If we can find a way to hack into their systems, we could potentially disable their security or even hijack one of their ships." Marcus, ever the pragmatist, added, "And if we can't find the control center? What then?" "Then we improvise," Sarah replied, her tone brooking no argument. "But we need to move. The longer we stay in one place, the more vulnerable we are." The group gathered their scant supplies, each carrying the weight of their predicament. As they moved out, Sarah couldn't help but reflect on the irony of their situation. They had become the very creatures they had once read about in history books, those who escaped captivity and rebelled against their captors. Only now, the stakes were far higher, and failure was not an option. They navigated through dense alien flora, each plant more bizarre than the last. The path was treacherous, with hidden pitfalls and aggressive fauna lurking in the shadows. But the humans moved with determination, driven by hope and a fierce will to survive. As they pressed on, the landscape began to change. The ground beneath their feet shifted from soft, mossy terrain to hard, metallic plates. Strange, towering structures loomed ahead, their surfaces shimmering in the dim light. "I think we've reached the edge of the habitat," Marcus whispered, pointing to a distant tower that pulsated with energy. "That could be a power station. Or a monitoring post," Dr. Park suggested. "If we can get close enough, maybe we can find a terminal to access." Sarah nodded, her mind working through the possibilities. "We need to be cautious. They could have guards." Before she could finish, a sound like thunder rumbled through the air. The ground trembled beneath them, and a massive shadow passed overhead. The group froze, eyes widening as an enormous Credorian airship descended from the clouds. The vessel was sleek and menacing, its hull bristling with weaponry. It hovered above the landscape, and from its belly, a squadron of drones spilled forth, their sensors sweeping the ground below. "We're out of time," Sarah hissed. "Move, now." The escapees scattered, darting into the underbrush as the drones fanned out in search of them. Sarah's heart pounded in her chest as she led the group towards the tower. Their only hope now was to reach it before they were discovered. They sprinted across the metallic expanse, the air thick with the hum of machinery and the buzzing of drones. Sarah could see the entrance to the tower ahead, a yawning aperture that promised shelter and, perhaps, salvation. But as they neared the entrance, a blinding light flooded the area, casting stark shadows and illuminating their forms. The drones had found them. "Into the tower," Sarah shouted, her voice barely audible over the cacophony. The group surged forward, adrenaline propelling them through the entrance just as the drones closed in. Inside, the air was cooler, the noise from outside muted by thick walls. They stumbled to a halt, gasping for breath. The interior of the tower was a labyrinth of corridors and rooms, each filled with alien technology. Sarah's mind raced as she tried to focus. "We need to find a control room," she said, her voice steady despite the chaos. "Marcus, can you find us a path?" Marcus nodded, already examining a nearby console. "Give me a minute." As he worked, the others kept watch, their nerves taut with anticipation. The silence was oppressive, broken only by the distant hum of machinery. Suddenly, Marcus spoke up. "Got it. There's a main control room a few levels up. I can override the security systems to get us there." "Do it," Sarah replied, her resolve hardening. "And let's hope we're not too late." They moved quickly through the corridors, Marcus leading the way with Sarah right behind him. The tension was palpable, each footstep echoing their urgency. As they ascended, the lights flickered ominously, hinting at the power and complexity of the systems running through the facility. They reached the control room, a vast space filled with consoles and holographic displays. Marcus immediately set to work, his fingers flying over the controls. Dr. Park joined him, her expertise in alien languages proving invaluable as they navigated the interface. Sarah kept watch at the entrance, her eyes scanning for any sign of pursuit. The drones were relentless, and it was only a matter of time before they breached the tower. "We're in," Marcus announced, his voice a mix of triumph and relief. "But there's a problem." "What is it?" Sarah asked, her gaze snapping to him. "The Credorians are using some kind of quantum encryption. We can shut down the local security systems, but accessing their communications is going to take time." "We don't have time," Sarah said, frustration edging her words. "But do what you can. Dr. Park, see if you can disable the drones." As the two worked frantically, the rest of the group stood ready, tense and alert. Mia and Liam watched the door with wide eyes, their earlier bravado replaced by the stark reality of their situation. "Captain," Carter said, breaking the silence, "even if we disable the drones, the Credorians will still come for us. We need a plan B." Sarah nodded, aware of the truth in his words. "Plan B is simple. We hold out until we can access the comms and call for help. Earth needs to know what's happening." Minutes felt like hours as they waited, the room heavy with the weight of their predicament. Finally, Dr. Park looked up, a small smile on her lips. "Drones are disabled, at least temporarily." "Good work," Sarah said, allowing herself a moment of hope. "Marcus, I'm close," he replied, sweat beading his brow. "Just need to bypass one more firewall." The sound of footsteps echoed down the corridor, growing louder by the second. The Credorians were approaching, their presence a stark reminder of the danger they faced. "We've got company," Sarah warned, raising her weapon. "Everyone, get ready." The door burst open, and a squad of Credorian soldiers stormed in, their weapons raised. Time seemed to slow as Sarah and her team sprang into action, each determined to protect their newfound freedom. The ensuing battle was a blur of motion and sound, the room filled with the sharp crack of energy weapons and the shouts of combatants. Sarah moved with practiced precision, her training taking over as she fought to hold the line. Amidst the chaos, Marcus continued to work, his focus unwavering. "Almost there," he muttered, his fingers dancing over the controls. A Credorian soldier lunged at him, but Dr. Park intercepted, using a piece of alien tech as an improvised weapon. The soldier staggered back, giving Marcus the time he needed. "Got it," Marcus shouted, the display lighting up with a burst of color. "Broadcasting now." Sarah heard his words, a surge of relief flooding through her. But the battle was far from over. The Credorians were relentless, their numbers overwhelming. "Carter, fall back," Sarah ordered, her voice carrying over the din. "We need to regroup." But before they could execute their retreat, a new threat emerged. The tower shuddered, an ominous hum resonating through its structure. The Credorians had activated some kind of countermeasure, and the air crackled with energy. "We need to get out of here," Sarah yelled, her instincts screaming of danger. Now, as they fought their way back towards the exit, the room erupted in a blinding flash. The Credorians had triggered an EMP, designed to disable the tower and its occupants. The humans were thrown to the ground, their senses overwhelmed by the explosion. As the dust settled, Sarah struggled to her feet, her ears ringing and her vision blurred. Around her, The others were doing the same, each grappling with the aftermath of the blast. But the Credorians were gone, their retreat a sign that they had achieved their goal. "Is everyone okay?" Sarah called out, her voice hoarse. A chorus of affirmations met her ears, though the group was battered and bruised. Marcus was already checking the systems, his expression grim. "The broadcast went out," he confirmed, "but the controls are fried. We're stuck here unless Earth picks up our signal." "And if they don't?" Dr. Park asked, her face pale in the dim light. "Then we keep fighting," Sarah replied, her resolve unbroken. "We're not done yet." Outside, the Credorian airship circled, a predator waiting for its prey to emerge. The humans were trapped, their future uncertain. But within the confines of the tower, a spark of hope remained, a beacon for those who dared to challenge their captors and reclaim their freedom. As the group regrouped and tended to their wounds, the weight of their situation settled over them like a shroud. They were alone in an alien world, hunted and outnumbered. But they were not defeated. Not yet. The cold, metallic hum of the alien craft reverberated through the vast chamber, a cacophony that underscored the enormity of their predicament. As Dr. Emily Carter surveyed the ragtag group of humans huddled together, she couldn't shake the feeling of being a mere pawn in a game far beyond her comprehension. The alien zoo escape had been only the beginning, and now the stakes were unfathomably higher. From the corner of her eye, Emily watched Lieutenant Noah Grant, his face a mask of stoic determination. He was speaking in hushed tones with a group of soldiers, men and women who had been plucked from various armies around the world, now forced to unite under a common threat. Grant's leadership had already proven invaluable, but even his unwavering confidence seemed to falter under the weight of their current reality. "We need a plan," Grant said, his voice barely rising above a whisper. "Something to give us a fighting chance." Emily stepped closer, her scientist's mind already racing through possibilities. "We can't win a war we don't understand. We need to learn more about why Earth has become the chosen battleground." A tall, wiry man with a sharp gaze and an aura of quiet authority joined them. He was Dr. Julian Reyes, a political strategist who had been crucial in deciphering the alien message that first revealed the zoo's existence. "It's a power play," he said, his voice laced with urgency. "The Galactic Council sees Earth as a strategic outpost. Our resources, location, even our biological diversity, it's all valuable in ways we can't yet fathom. But how do we fight them?" One of the soldiers, a young woman barely out of her teens, asked. Her eyes were wide with fear, yet there was a spark of defiance. "We don't have their technology or their numbers. We're outmatched," Grant admitted, looking around at the group. "But that doesn't mean we're defeated." Reyes nodded, his mind already piecing together the fragments of a strategy. "There are factions within the council, divisions we might exploit. If we can find a way to turn them against each other, we might create the distraction we need." Emily's heart pounded in her chest. She knew the stakes were high, but the thought of relying on alien politics to save humanity was terrifyingly uncertain. "And what about our people back on Earth? We have to protect them too." "We will," Grant promised, his eyes meeting hers with an intensity that sent a shiver down her spine. "But first, we survive this." Their conversation was cut short by a distant rumble, the ship shuddering as if caught in a massive storm. Panic rippled through the group as the lights flickered and alarms blared, their shrill cries echoing through the corridors. "We're under attack," Grant shouted. "Everyone, move." Chaos erupted as they scrambled for cover, the ship lurching violently under the assault. Emily's heart raced as she clung to a wall, her mind screaming for a solution even as panic threatened to overwhelm her. They were trapped, caught in the crossfire of forces they couldn't begin to understand. Amidst the chaos, Emily caught sight of a small group of alien figures darting through the shadows. They moved with a fluid grace, their forms barely visible in the dim light. Her breath caught. Were they allies or another threat? "Noah," she called out, pointing towards the figures. "Over there." Grant followed her gaze, his eyes narrowing. "We need answers," he said, his voice a mixture of determination and desperation. "And they're the only ones who can give them to us." With a nod of agreement, Emily and Grant led a small team in pursuit, navigating the labyrinthine corridors as the ship continued to tremble. The aliens moved swiftly, but Emily's adrenaline-fueled resolve kept her on their tail. As they closed in, the aliens turned, their eyes, strangely human in emotion, fixing on the approaching group. There was a moment of tense silence, the air thick with unspoken questions. "Why are you here?" Grant demanded, his voice authoritative yet tinged with a plea for understanding. "Why Earth?" One of the aliens stepped forward, its voice resonating strangely in the human ear. "Earth is a convergence point," it said, its eyes reflecting an intelligence that was both alien and achingly familiar. "Your world is the key to our survival, as well as yours. But not all see it this way." Emily felt a flicker of hope. "Then help us," she implored. "Tell us how to fight back." The alien hesitated, a flicker of conflict crossing its features. "We are bound by laws older than your world," it replied. "But there are those among us who wish to break free, to end this cycle of destruction." Grant seized on the admission. "Then join us. Together, we can stop this." There was another rumble, more violent than before, and the ship groaned under the strain. The alien's eyes darted around, its decision made. "Follow us," it said. "There is more at play than you realize, and time is running out." They moved quickly, the human and alien alliance forged in the crucible of desperation. As they navigated the ship's labyrinthine corridors, Emily's mind buzzed with possibilities. The aliens knew more than they let on, but trust was a fragile thing, easily shattered in the void of space. Their journey led them to a control room, the walls lined with screens displaying a dizzying array of data. The alien leader moved to a console, its fingers dancing over the controls with a familiarity that spoke of deep understanding. "We are not your enemies," it said, the screens flickering to life with images of Earth and the Galactic Council. "But there are those who would see your world destroyed to further their own ambitions." Emily studied the images, her heart sinking as the scope of the political machinations became clear. Earth was a pawn, its fate tied to the whims of alien powers. "And what do you want?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. The alien turned to her, its expression unreadable. "To survive, as do you. Our fates are intertwined, more than you realize." As they spoke, the ship shuddered again, the lights dimming ominously. Emily's heart skipped a beat, time was running out. "We need to get back to Earth," Grant said, his voice firm. "We can help each other, but only if we can defend our home." The alien nodded, a decision made. "We will help you, but you must be prepared for what lies ahead." Emily's mind raced, the weight of their predicament pressing down on her. They were outmatched, caught in a web of politics and power far beyond their understanding. But as she looked around at the determined faces of her fellow humans, she felt a flicker of something she hadn't dared to hope for: resilience. Together, they worked to stabilize the ship, each small victory a step towards survival. Amidst the chaos, Emily found herself drawn to Grant, their shared determination forging a bond that transcended the dire circumstances. "We can do this," he whispered to her during a brief respite, his hand brushing against hers. "Together, we can find a way." His words ignited a fire within her, a fierce determination that pushed back the darkness threatening to engulf them. They were outmatched, their world at the mercy of forces they couldn't control. But they were human, and that meant something more than any alien could understand. As they prepared to return to Earth, a new resolve took hold. They would fight, not just for survival, but for the future of their world. It was a battle fraught with uncertainty, but they would face it together. In the end, Emily realized, it wasn't just Earth that was the battleground, it was humanity itself. And in that realization, she found hope. Not just the hope of survival, but the hope of something greater, a future forged by their own hands, against all odds. With allies both human and alien, they would face the darkness. And perhaps, just perhaps, they would find a way to turn the tide. The air in the maintenance tunnels was tight and humid, a stark contrast to the open, albeit artificial, sky of the alien zoo above. Lieutenant Kira Mallory and her ragtag group of fellow escapees, a mix of humans and sympathetic aliens, pushed forward through the dimly lit corridor. The stakes were higher now, with the alien wardens tightening their grip around the zoo, determined to reclaim their captives. Kira could almost feel the tension in the air, like an invisible weight pressing down on their shoulders. Behind her, Yoron, the Thalaxian engineer who had become an invaluable ally, paused to adjust the settings on his crude, makeshift scanner. "Kira, we've got a problem," he said, his voice laced with a tense urgency that made the hairs on the back of her neck stand up. "What is it?" she asked, already fearing the answer. "The wardens have activated the containment fields. We're effectively trapped in this sector, Euron explained, tapping a screen that showed a web of red lines crisscrossing their intended path. Damn it, Kira muttered under her breath. They had been so close. Is there any way to bypass it? Euron shook his head, the tendrils on his face twitching slightly. Not without alerting them to our exact position. We've already pushed our luck too far. We're running out of time. Kira turned to address the group, her voice calm but authoritative. Listen up, everyone. The wardens are tightening the noose. We need to find another way out. Suggestions? A chorus of murmurs followed, voices overlapping in a symphony of desperation and determination. Among them, a young human named Emma, barely in her 20s, raised her hand. What about the old service ducts? They're marked as obsolete on the maps, but they're still there, right? That might work, Euron mused, a glimmer of hope in his eyes. They're not part of the active system, which means they might bypass the containment fields. All right, Kira decided. We take the ducts. Emma, lead the way. The group hurried along the tunnels, the faint hum of the containment fields a constant reminder of the warden's looming presence. As they moved, Kira could feel the unspoken fear that clung to them, a silent specter that whispered of failure. Yet, beneath it, there was a flicker of something stronger, resolve, the indomitable spirit that had kept them going despite the odds. They found the entrance to the service ducts, an inconspicuous hatch set into the wall. Emma and Euron worked together to open it, their fingers moving in practiced synchronization. The hatch creaked open, revealing a narrow passage barely wide enough to crawl through. We'll move single file, Kira instructed. Stay close and keep quiet. We don't know what we'll find. One by one, they entered the duct, the metal walls pressing in on all sides. The air was cooler here, but it carried an unsettling stillness, as if the zoo itself was holding its breath. Kira led the way, her senses on high alert, every creak and groan of the structure a potential harbinger of discovery. They crawled for what felt like hours, the passage twisting and turning in a labyrinthine maze beneath the zoo. The sounds of pursuit were distant, but ever present, a constant reminder of the warden's relentless determination. They had become more than just captors. They were a force of nature, an unyielding storm that sought to reclaim its wayward elements. Kira, stop, Euron called from behind, his voice barely above a whisper. I'm picking up something ahead. She froze, her heart pounding in her chest. What is it? Heat signatures, he replied, adjusting his scanner. Multiple, from what looks like an access point. Could be guards, Emma speculated, her voice tight with anxiety. Or a trap, Kira added grimly. Either way, we can't turn back now. They pressed on, moving with the cautious precision of predators stalking their prey. As they approached the access point, Kira signaled for the group to halt. Peering through the narrow grate, she saw a small room, the walls lined with control panels and blinking lights. 3 figures stood inside, their silhouettes sharp against the dim glow. Looks like technicians, Euron whispered, peeking over her shoulder. Think we can take them? Emma asked, her voice a mix of fear and determination. We don't have a choice, Kira replied. We need access to those controls. We take them by surprise, disable them before they can raise the alarm. With a nod, the group prepared to breach the room. Kira counted down from 3, her fingers tight around the handle of her makeshift weapon, a blunt metal rod scavenged from the maintenance tunnels. On 1, they burst through the grate, a coordinated flash of movement that took the technicians by surprise. The struggle was brief but intense, the confined space amplifying every sound, every impact. Kira fought with the ferocity of desperation, her every move driven by the unyielding need to survive. Within moments, the technicians were subdued, their protests silenced by the harsh reality of their situation. Euron quickly moved to the control panels, his fingers flying over the alien symbols with practiced ease. I can disable the containment fields from here, he announced, a note of triumph in his voice. Hurry, Kira urged. We don't know how much time we have. As Euron worked, the group kept a wary eye on the unconscious technicians, the tension in the room palpable. Every second felt like an eternity, the weight of their situation pressing down on them with relentless force. Finally, Euron let out a breath of relief. Done. The fields are down. Good, Kira said, a smile of triumph tugging at her lips. But it was short-lived, cut off by the harsh blare of the alarm system, its wail echoing through the corridors like a banshee's scream. They know we're here, Emma gasped, her eyes wide with fear. "Then we move," Kira ordered, her voice steady despite the chaos. "We stick to the plan. We get to the surface and find a way out." The group fled the room, their footfalls a rapid staccato against the metal floors. The corridors seemed to close in around them, the zoo's once grand halls transformed into a twisting nightmare of shadows and sound. The wardens were coming, their presence a dark cloud that loomed ever closer. As they ran, Kira's mind raced, her thoughts a chaotic swirl of strategies and possibilities. They needed to adapt, to find a way to turn the tide in their favor. And yet, as the sounds of pursuit grew louder, a cold dread settled in her stomach. The zoo had become a battlefield, a place where every decision carried the weight of life and death. And as they emerged into the open air, the artificial skies stretching above them in a mocking parody of freedom, Kira knew that they were running out of time. "Over there," Yoron shouted, pointing to a distant structure. "It's an access terminal. We can use it to override the security systems, create a path to the exit." "Go," Kira urged, pushing the group forward with renewed urgency. "We'll hold them off." The group split, Yoron and a few others racing towards the terminal while the rest of them dug in, using the terrain to their advantage. Kira steadied herself, her makeshift weapon ready, her eyes scanning the horizon for any sign of movement. The wardens arrived in force, their numbers overwhelming. Kira and her companions fought with everything they had, their determination a blazing fire that refused to be extinguished. But it was a losing battle, the sheer weight of the wardens' assault threatening to crush them beneath its relentless tide. "Kira," Emma screamed, her voice cutting through the chaos. "We're surrounded." Kira turned, her heart sinking at the sight of the wardens closing in from all sides. There was no escape, no way out. They had played their last card, and it had not been enough. As the wardens advanced, their weapons trained on the beleaguered escapees, Kira felt a cold weight settle over her. This was their darkest moment, the point where hope seemed to falter, its light flickering like a candle in the wind. Yet even as despair threatened to claim her, Kira refused to yield. She was a human, a creature of adaptability and resilience, and she would fight to the very end. Because that was what humans did. They defied the impossible, faced the unthinkable, and fought on, even when all seemed lost. The cold, unyielding metal walls of the alien zoo closed in around the small group of humans, each one feeling the weight of their situation pressing against their chests. The stench of defeat lingered in the stale air, the kind of defeat that gnawed at the edges of the human spirit, threatening to consume it entirely. They stood in the dark belly of the alien complex, surrounded by the cacophony of alien creatures, all held captive just like them. Yet, even amidst this despair, the flicker of human determination refused to be snuffed out. The night was unnaturally quiet, as if the universe itself was holding its breath. Inside their cell, Emily, a former aerospace engineer, sat huddled with her group. Their last attempt to escape had been thwarted, and the loss of two of their own had left a gaping hole in their already fragile unity. She glanced at their makeshift leader, John, who was pacing back and forth, his brow furrowed in concentration, as he tried to formulate the next step in their audacious plan. From the corner, an alien surveillance drone watched them with an unblinking red eye. Its presence was a constant reminder of their captor's omnipresence, an ever-watchful warden ready to crush any hint of rebellion. The aliens, whom the humans had dubbed the overseers, had grown complacent in their control, underestimating the resilience of the human spirit. And therein lay the humans' only advantage. "They think they've won," John muttered under his breath, stopping his pacing to look each of his companions in the eye. "But they don't understand who they're dealing with. They think we're just animals to be caged and displayed. They've forgotten what it means to be human." His words hung in the air, a defiant spark against the encroaching darkness. Emily met his gaze, feeling the embers of hope stir within her. "We've come too far to give up now," she said, her voice steady. "We have to keep pushing, keep adapting. It's what we do best." The group nodded, each member drawing strength from the other. They had survived this long because of their ingenuity and their refusal to be broken. The overseers, in their arrogance, had made a critical error. They had underestimated their prey. The humans were not just surviving, they were learning. Their previous failed escape attempt had taught them valuable lessons. They had mapped parts of the zoo's labyrinthine structure, learned the patterns of their captors, and discovered the weaknesses in the security systems. The overseers, blinded by their own superiority, had not noticed the small acts of defiance, the testing of boundaries that had been steadily escalating. Emily pulled out a small device from her pocket, a rudimentary scanner cobbled together from scavenged parts. It was crude but effective, a testament to human resourcefulness. "This should help us bypass some of the security systems," she said, holding it up for the others to see. "It won't give us complete freedom, but it might just buy us enough time." John nodded, a grim smile flickering across his face. "It's a start. We'll need every second we can get." The group huddled closer, whispering plans and sharing knowledge. It was a fragile hope, but it was all they had. As the hours ticked by, they worked tirelessly, their determination growing even as the situation seemed increasingly desperate. Outside, the alien guards patrolled in their mechanical precision, unconcerned by the humans' activity. To the overseers, the humans were inconsequential, their small acts of rebellion nothing more than the futile struggles of a dying breed. They were confident in their victory, secure in their technological superiority. But the humans knew better. They knew that history was written by those who refused to accept their fate, by those who fought back against impossible odds. They knew that their moment would come, that all they had to do was survive long enough to seize it. And so they continued, driven by the knowledge that their struggle was not just for themselves, but for all of humanity. They were not just fighting for their freedom. They were fighting for the right to be human, for the right to define their own destiny. As the first light of dawn began to seep through the cracks in the walls, the group knew that the time for action was drawing near. They had pushed themselves to the breaking point and beyond. Every failure, every loss had only served to harden their resolve. "We'll make our move tonight," John said, his voice steady with the weight of their decision. "We've prepared as much as we can. It's time to take back our lives." Emily nodded, feeling the surge of adrenaline course through her veins. "Tonight," she echoed, determination burning in her eyes. The group dispersed to rest, knowing that they would need every ounce of strength for what lay ahead. As Emily laid her head down, she thought of Earth, of the home they had been torn away from. She pictured the stars in the night sky, a reminder that even in the vastness of the universe, humanity was never truly alone. The hours slipped away, and as the shadows deepened, the group gathered once more. There was a solemnity in the air, a quiet understanding that what they were about to attempt might be their last. But there was also a fierce resolve, a shared belief that they were fighting for something greater than themselves. With a final nod, John led the way, the group moving silently through the corridors. Emily's heart pounded in her chest, each step a symphony of fear and determination. They moved with purpose, their eyes darting for any sign of danger. The alien zoo loomed around them, a twisted maze of steel and technology. But to the humans, it was nothing more than an obstacle to overcome. They had studied its intricacies, memorized its flaws, and now they would exploit them. The first hurdle was a security panel, its alien symbols glowing ominously in the dim light. Emily stepped forward, her hands steady as she manipulated the scanner. The seconds felt like hours, each one stretching into eternity until finally, there was a soft click. The door slid open with a whisper, revealing the path beyond. They moved quickly, shadows in the night, each step taking them closer to freedom. The air was charged with tension, the possibility of discovery hanging over them like a sword. But they pressed on, driven by the knowledge that this was their moment. As they approached the central hub of the zoo, the heart of the overseer's operation, they could feel the pulse of alien technology all around them. It was a fortress of light and sound, designed to intimidate and control. But the humans were not deterred. They had a plan, a desperate gamble that could turn the tide in their favor. John glanced at Emily, their eyes meeting in a silent exchange. It was time, she nodded, stepping forward to take her place at the control panel. Her fingers flew over the keys, her mind racing as she worked to disable the security systems. It was a delicate dance, one wrong move and everything would be lost. The others kept watch, their hearts pounding in their chests. The tension was palpable, a living thing that threatened to choke them. But they held their ground, drawing strength from each other, from the shared belief that they could succeed. Finally, with a triumphant beep, the system yielded to Emily's touch. The lights flickered, the alarms silenced. The path to freedom lay open before them. But even as they moved to make their escape, the overseers descended, their confidence shattered by the audacity of the humans' rebellion. The alien guards swarmed, their weapons drawn, determined to crush the uprising before it could gain momentum. In that moment, as chaos erupted around them, the humans stood their ground. They fought with everything they had, every ounce of strength, every drop of courage. They were outnumbered, outgunned, but they refused to give in. Emily found herself cornered, her back against the wall as an alien guard advanced. Her heart raced, fear clawing at her throat, but she held her ground. She was not just fighting for herself, she was fighting for all of them, for every human who had ever dared to dream of freedom. As the guard lunged, Emily dodged, her mind racing as she searched for a way out. And then she saw it, a vulnerability, a chink in the alien's armor. With a cry of defiance, she struck, her makeshift weapon finding its mark. The guard crumpled and Emily surged forward, her victory a beacon of hope. Around her, the battle raged. The humans fought with a ferocity born of desperation, their determination a force of nature. They were not just fighting to survive, they were fighting to win. And slowly, against all odds, the tide began to turn. The overseers, so confident in their superiority, found themselves overwhelmed by the sheer will of their captives. They had underestimated the humans, and now they were paying the price. But even as victory seemed within reach, the humans knew that their struggle was far from over. They had won a battle, but the war was just beginning. They would need to regroup, to plan, to adapt. But they had proven that they could fight back, that they could defy the odds. As the dust settled, John and Emily stood together, their eyes meeting in a silent promise. They had come this far, and they would not stop now. They would keep fighting, keep pushing, until they had won their freedom. The humans had reached their breaking point, but they had not broken. They had been forged in the crucible of adversity, their resolve strengthened by the fires of determination. And now, as they stood on the brink of a new dawn, they knew that they had the power to change their fate. It was the darkest hour, but it was also the moment of their awakening. The humans were ready to rise. The alien compound buzzed with an unease that had been growing since the initial escape attempt 2 days prior. The Xerthians, an advanced species known for their mastery in containment and control, were themselves feeling the tightening grip of uncertainty, an unfamiliar sensation for a race that prided itself on omnipotence. Inside the critical operations room, Krelin, the Xerthian chief warden, scowled at the holographic screens displaying the feed from various surveillance drones. The humans, a species they had collected for their zoo exhibition, had been contained after the initial breach, but something was gnawing at him. Their behavior in captivity belied a complexity that was unexpected, almost insidious in its calm calculation. "Chief Krelin," said Adrax, his second in command, breaking the silence. "We have analyzed the footage of the recent breakout attempt. It appears they've been using rudimentary tools, fashioned from the very elements of their enclosures." Tools? Krelin's mandibles clicked with irritation. They shouldn't have the cognitive ability to engineer tools from their environment. This is not in line with their behavioral profile. Indeed, Adrax agreed, eyes narrowing as he focused on the feeds. "It seems we may have underestimated the extent of their adaptability and problem-solving skills." Krelin's frustration deepened. "Increase the security measures. Let no human move unobserved." As the Xerthian command hastily recalibrated their strategies, the humans, oblivious to the commotion they were causing, gathered in the far corner of their enclosure. Tension crackled in the air, but it was not the fear or despair that had initially marked their arrival. Instead, it was a palpable sense of determination, a shared resolve that had been burgeoning since their capture. "Are you sure about this, Alex?" whispered Jody, her voice barely audible over the hum of Xerthian machinery echoing through the compound. Alex, the de facto leader of the human group due to his quick thinking and technical acumen, nodded. "We've been underestimating ourselves as much as they have been underestimating us. We're not just surviving here, we're learning, adapting. That's our advantage." Nearby, Manu, a former engineer, was bent over a makeshift blueprint drawn on the dirt floor, a schematic of the compound's electrical system. He looked up, his eyes glinting with a mix of anxiety and excitement. "I've been observing their power grid. It's centralized, which means if we can disrupt it, we might be able to get past the security barriers." "And then what?" asked Lisa, a biologist who had proven invaluable in understanding the Xerthians' ecological systems. "Even if we get out, we're on an alien planet with no resources." "What's the endgame?" The endgame is freedom, Alex replied, his voice firm. But more than that, it's showing them that we're not just specimens. We're something they need to reckon with. The plan was audacious but simple. They would create a short circuit in one of the power conduits, causing a temporary blackout in their section of the compound. With the surveillance down, they could make their way to the hangar where the smaller crafts were stored. As the humans set their plan into motion, the Zervian command continued to underestimate the depth of human ingenuity. Krillin was busy fortifying the outer defenses, unaware that the real threat was already inside, festering. Back in the enclosure, Manu worked deftly with the copper-like wires he'd scavenged from broken Zervian machinery. He handed them to Jody and Lisa, who twisted them together meticulously, creating a rudimentary but effective bypass for the electrical surge they planned to initiate. "Okay, I think we're ready," Manu said, wiping sweat from his brow. "When this goes off, we'll have about 5 minutes before they can get the backup systems online." Alex took a breath, glancing at each of them in turn. "This is it. Remember, we stick together, no matter what happens." With a nod, Manu connected the final wire, and a spark erupted, quickly followed by the dull hum of the power conduit escalating into a whine before silence fell. The lights flickered and died, plunging their section into darkness. "Let's move," Alex urged, leading the way as they slipped through the now powerless barrier of their enclosure, spirits buoyed by the success of their first step. The corridors, usually bathed in artificial light, were now shadowy and disorienting. The humans moved quickly, their senses heightened in the unfamiliar darkness. They encountered minimal resistance, the Zervians caught off guard by the unexpected blackout. As they approached the hangar, the scale of their challenge became evident. The hangar doors were heavily fortified, but Manu's understanding of mechanics and Jody's deft fingers made short work of the lock system. With a screech, the doors slid open, revealing the crafts within. Inside, the crafts were sleek and alien, their controls an array of inscrutable glyphs and symbols. But Alex, drawing on his extensive knowledge of human engineering, began to decipher the consoles with remarkable speed. "Get in," he ordered, as the others clambered aboard the nearest craft. Back in the control room, the backup systems finally whirred to life, and the Zervians were thrown into controlled chaos as screens flickered back on, revealing the hangar breach. "They're in the hangar," Adrax exclaimed, panic threading his voice. "They've disabled the security locks." Krillin's eyes narrowed, a grudging respect mingling with his anger. "I see now. We have gravely underestimated them." On board the craft, Alex and Manu worked in tandem, their hands a blur over the controls. "I think I've got it," Alex said, as the craft hummed to life, the dashboard lighting up with a pulsing energy. As the hangar doors began to close, Alex slammed a control lever forward, and the craft surged ahead, slipping through the narrowing gap and into the open sky. Cheers erupted from the group, a heady mix of disbelief and exultation. But the moment was short-lived as the craft was pursued by Zervian interceptors, their sleek forms emerging from the compound below. "They're coming after us," Jody shouted, eyes wide as the interceptors closed the distance. "Hold on," Alex called, his mind working at a furious pace. "They may have the numbers, but we've got something they don't." He banked the craft sharply, weaving a complex pattern through the sky, leveraging the unpredictable agility that the Zervians hadn't anticipated. The interceptors, designed for direct pursuit, struggled to match the erratic flight. As they veered out of the Zervian territory, Alex scanned the displays, trying to identify a safe haven among the alien terrain. Meanwhile, Lisa monitored the sensors, watching for any sign of a ground threat. "What's our plan after this?" Manu asked, holding on tightly as the craft shuddered under the stress of high-speed maneuvers. "We find allies," Alex replied, eyes fixed on the horizon. Below them, Krillin watched through the screens, a newfound respect tempered by anger. This small group of humans had not only outsmarted them but had done so with a tenacity and resilience that was both admirable and infuriating. "They are not like any other species we've encountered," Adrax mused, his voice tinged with a hint of awe. "No," Krillin agreed, his voice low. "They are not." The realization was a bitter pill, but it was undeniable. They had underestimated humanity, and now, as the humans disappeared into the sky, Krillin was left to ponder the implications of this revelation. As the craft soared over the alien landscape, the humans felt the weight of their victory, tempered by the knowledge that this was just the beginning. They had proven their worth, but their journey was far from over. In that moment, the tide shifted. No longer were they mere exhibits in a galactic zoo. They were free, and they were determined. The world had underestimated them, but the humans would not be underestimated again. They were ready for whatever came next, their eyes set on the horizon and the challenges that lay beyond. As the craft flew farther from the Zerthian compound, the humans' resolve solidified, their unity a beacon of hope and defiance. They were not invincible, but they were undeniably formidable. For the first time since their capture, they felt the stirring of a new dawn, the promise of a future shaped by their own hands, a future that would not be dictated by alien whims but by human will and ingenuity. As the heavy steel door creaked open, the light from the passageway spilled into the darkened chamber, illuminating the huddled forms of the captured humans. Their eyes, weary yet determined, flickered with a glint of defiance. This was the moment they had been waiting for, and despite the exhaustion etched into their features, there was an unmistakable air of unity and resolve. The alien warden, a towering creature with scales that glistened in the dim light, moved forward with a sense of superiority and arrogance. His species, the Zalthar, had always considered themselves the apex of intellectual and technological prowess. They had plucked humans from Earth, convinced of their inferiority and destined to become mere exhibits in this intergalactic zoo, a testament to their dominance. Yet, within that very assumption lay their most catastrophic misjudgment. Unbeknownst to the Zalthar, humanity's strength did not lie solely in their intellect or technology, but in their relentless adaptability, their spirit of resistance, and their capacity for unity in the face of adversity. A woman, Sarah, who had emerged as the de facto leader of the humans, stepped forward. Her voice, steady and calm, cut through the silence. "You thought you could cage us, keep us as curiosities. But you underestimated the power of a united humanity." The warden's eyes narrowed. "Your species is fascinating, but ultimately primitive. This is your place." Sarah smirked, her eyes gleaming with a fierce intelligence. "Let's see if you still think that when the tables turn." With a strategic nod from Sarah, the humans sprang into action. Months of planning and covert communication had culminated in this moment. The Zalthar had monitored their physical activities but had failed to account for their ingenuity and ability to communicate in ways beyond their understanding. Silent gestures, coded phrases, and even the simplest of shared glances had forged an unbreakable network of resistance among the captives. The lights flickered and then plunged into darkness, a result of the ingenious sabotage orchestrated by a former electrical engineer among them. He had managed to rewire the circuits using nothing more than discarded scraps and a keen understanding of alien technology, something the Zalthar had arrogantly believed impossible for a human. Panic rippled through the alien guards. Deprived of their advanced systems and reliant on technology to guide them, they faltered in the darkness. Meanwhile, the humans navigated with uncanny precision, their senses honed by months of captivity, their movements coordinated and precise. In the chaos, another human, Mark, a former military strategist, led a team through the service tunnels. His plan was as bold as it was simple: exploit the very infrastructure that was supposed to contain them. He had memorized the layout of the facility, gleaned from fragments of conversations and glimpses during routine transfers, piecing together the alien architecture in his mind. The Zalthar, confident in their biometric locks and security protocols, never anticipated that humans would bypass them using ingenuity rather than brute force. A former locksmith, Maria, had spent countless hours studying the alien technology with a single-minded determination. Her deft fingers manipulated the locks, exploiting weaknesses the Zalthar never imagined their systems had. The warden's voice boomed through the corridors, a mixture of rage and disbelief. "Contain them, they must not escape," but his words were drowned out by the growing roar of rebellion. Humans, once passive and observed like animals, now surged forth with a primal energy. Their cries echoed through the halls, a testament to their indomitable will. In the central control room, Sam, a computer scientist, orchestrated the digital assault. The Zalthar's over-reliance on their advanced technology became their Achilles' heel. Sam, who had secretly studied their systems, launched a series of calculated cyber attacks, turning the very technology meant to imprison them into their ally. Monitors flickered, alarms blared, and the intricate systems that governed the zoo's operations spiraled into chaos. Doors opened and closed at random, security feeds looped deceptive footage, and the aliens' communications were jammed with incessant static. The warden's composure cracked as he realized the depth of their miscalculation. This cannot be. They are just humans. Standing amidst the chaos, Sarah met his gaze, her eyes filled with a defiant fire. Just humans? You have no idea what that means. The culmination of human excellence was not just in their ability to fight back, but in their harmonious blend of minds and skills. They were not a monolith, but a tapestry of diverse backgrounds and expertise, woven together by a common cause. The final push came as the humans reached the hangar bay, where the Zalthur's ships lay docked. The plan was audacious. Commandeer a vessel and make their escape, using the very technology that had brought them here. The Zalthur, so sure of their superiority, had not considered the possibility of their own ships being used against them. With a decisive nod from Mark, the group split into teams. Some provided cover, using makeshift weapons crafted from their environment, while others, led by Maria, worked to bypass the ship's security measures. The warden, now frantic, attempted to rally his forces. But the humans, driven by the promise of freedom and fueled by the knowledge that this was their only chance, moved with an unstoppable momentum. As Maria successfully breached the ship's systems, the humans flooded aboard. Engines roared to life, the hum of alien technology now under human control. The hangar doors opened, revealing the vast expanse of space beyond, a sight that filled them with both awe and determination. In a final act of defiance, Sarah turned back to the warden. This is what it means to be human. We adapt, we resist, and we overcome. With that, the ship surged forward, breaking free from the confines of the alien zoo. As they soared into the unknown, leaving their captors behind, the humans shared a collective breath of victory. The warden watched, his mind reeling from the realization that the species he deemed inferior had outsmarted and overpowered them. The Zalthur's hubris had been their downfall, and now, with their captives gone, they were left to grapple with the consequences of their arrogance. As the stars stretched before them, the humans aboard the ship began to chart a course home. Their journey was not yet over, but the hardest part was behind them. They had proven, beyond any doubt, the exceptional resilience and capability of humanity. Back on Earth, their story would become a symbol, a testament to human tenacity and the power of unity. It would inspire generations to come, a reminder that no matter the odds, no matter the adversary, humanity had the capacity to rise above, to turn the tables, and to triumph against all expectations. The Zalthur, once so sure of their superiority, now had to reckon with the undeniable truth. Humans were far more than mere exhibits. They were a force to be reckoned with, capable of extraordinary feats when pushed to their limits. As the ship's engines propelled them through the vastness of space, the humans aboard felt the weight of their victory. They had not only escaped the alien zoo but had shattered the chains of oppression with their ingenuity, courage, and unyielding spirit. Their triumph was a testament to the extraordinary potential of humanity, a force that, when united, could overcome any obstacle, defy any expectation, and achieve the impossible. With their eyes set on the stars, they charted a course back to Earth, their hearts filled with hope and the promise of freedom. The once oppressive walls of the alien zoo were now crumbling, open to the brilliant sky that stretched infinitely above, as a testament to the resilience and ingenuity of humanity. The humans who had been captured and displayed as mere curiosities had turned the tables, with their unexpected escape orchestrated into a full-blown rebellion. In the aftermath, the alien infrastructure that had once held dominion over countless species was in disarray, their control shattered by a species deemed lesser by their captors. Captain Sarah Thompson stood at the forefront of this newfound freedom, her blue eyes scanning the horizon where the alien ships were now specks retreating into the void. The victory was profound, not just for those who had been imprisoned but for all mankind. Humanity had asserted itself defiantly, not through sheer might, but through the unity and cleverness that had long been underestimated by the galaxy's more technologically advanced species. It feels surreal, doesn't it? Philip, the former engineer turned strategist, said, walking up beside her. His eyes were filled with a mixture of pride and exhaustion, much like everyone else who had endured the ordeal. Surreal, yes, Sarah replied, but also inevitable. We were never meant to be caged. Their victory had sent shockwaves through the interstellar community. News of the human uprising spread like a wildfire, sparking debates and discussions across countless worlds. The dominant species, who had long held sway in the Galactic Council, were forced to reconsider their policies and prejudices. Humanity's triumph had become a symbol of change, urging other oppressed beings to reconsider their fates. In the weeks that followed, Sarah and her comrades became diplomats and envoys, teaching other species the value of collaboration and resistance. The story of their escape was not just a tale of rebellion, but of hope and solidarity, igniting a movement that threatened to topple an ancient status quo. Back on Earth, the impact was equally profound. Humanity had not only survived but thrived in adversity. The escape emboldened human leaders to push for greater exploration and engagement with the galaxy, no longer content to be passive players in the cosmic arena. New laws were enacted to protect against the capture and trade of sentient beings, making Earth a beacon of hope and a sanctuary for those seeking refuge from galactic tyranny. The characters, whose lives had been irrevocably altered by their experiences, found new roles in this changing world. Philip returned to engineering, but now focused on developing technologies that would ensure humanity's defense and autonomy. His inventions, inspired by the alien technology he had once been forced to understand as a captive, became integral to human advancement. Meanwhile, Sarah took on a role within the newly formed Interstellar Relations Council, ensuring that humanity's voice was heard and respected. Her leadership during the uprising had marked her as a visionary, someone capable of seeing beyond the stars, into the very heart of what it meant to be human. As for the aliens who had once been their captors, they found themselves facing a new reality. The Galactic Council, pressured by a wave of interstellar activism inspired by humanity's defiance, began dismantling the oppressive systems that had long kept countless species in bondage. The notion of zoos, once seen as harmless exhibitions, was now recognized for the cruelty it was, and reparations were demanded. "We've done the impossible," Sarah mused one evening, looking out at the stars from her office in the council. It was a quiet, reflective moment, the kind she cherished amidst the chaos of politics and diplomacy. "Humans have a knack for that," Philip replied, joining her in stargazing. "It's what makes us who we are." Their conversation was a testament to the journey they had embarked on together, from prisoners to pioneers. The stars that once seemed so distant, so untouchable, were now within reach, not as conquerors but as equals in a vast and diverse galaxy. The story of humanity's escape from the alien zoo had become more than just a narrative of survival. It was a declaration that no being, regardless of origin, should ever be caged or silenced. As the night deepened, Sarah felt a sense of peace and purpose, knowing that humanity had not only changed their fate but had also inspired a universe to reconsider what it meant to be free. And so, under the vast tapestry of space, humanity stood united, forever changed, and forever altering the course of history not just for themselves, but for all beings yearning for freedom.